Hello dear students. In the third part of the lecture, based on Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, I will discuss the plot of the novel. The plot of the novel is non-linear, digressive, lengthy, fantastic, disorderly, dense, unfathomable, elaborate, complex, but enthralling. It demands patience from the readers to follow the different patterns Rushdie weaves into a complex whole. The plot is divided into three parts, each one chronicling a different stage in the story of Salim's life and the lives of his family members, the history of Indian subcontinent and the growth, development and loss of Salim's magical powers that link them all together. The novel deals with India's transition from British colonialism to independence and the partition of subcontinent. It is considered an example of post-colonial literature, postmodernist literature and magical realism. The drab, ironical, violent, even subjects during the post-colonial period, they are presented in the novel in an interesting way because of the use of postmodernist technique and magical realism. The story is told by its chief protagonist Salim Sinai. He is also the narrator of the story. He is telling about his life as well as the life of India, the history of India, which begins from the period of nationalism and ends after the declaration of emergency. Salim Sinai and is set in the context of actual historical events as with historical fiction. It is dealing about various crucial historical events of that period. Rushdie concocts a heady mix of history and narrative technique to bring on the table a plethora of issues concerning the post-colonial identity of the Indian born after partition. Salim Sinai, who works in a pickle factory and narrating his story to his co-worker Padma, he is self-conscious of explaining his story, his family history, while describing his grandfather and grandmother's personal history. Salim intertwines Indian history within his narrative. The story begins by narrating the life history of his grandfather and grandmother, and along with he is intertwining the Indian history. This combination of his own familial history and Indian history culminates in the moment of his birth. Born at precisely midnight August 15, 1947, Salim echoes the birth of an independent India, which gained its independence from Great Britain at the same exact moment as Salim's birth. So, the birth of Salim coincides with the birth of the nation, and that's why he's saying, my life history is handcuffed to the history of India. The novel traces the destiny of a Muslim Indian family from 1915 to 1977. It begins from grandparents, parents, and then Salim talks about himself. He opens the novel by explaining that he was born on midnight August 15, 1947, at the exact moment India gained its independence. Now nearing his 31st birthday, Salim believes that his body is beginning to crack and fall apart. Fearing that his death is imminent, he grows anxious to tell his story. Salim claims that his body, worn down by time history, and fatigue will soon break into hundreds of millions of pieces. Before that, he wants to narrate his story for the sake of the audience, for his child Adam, and narrating to this lady Padma. So, he has a premonition of death. He is aware that his body will disintegrate, but he wants to make himself immortal, or he wants to save himself by narrating the story as Shahzade has done. Rushdie was influenced by the Arabian Nights, where Shahzade has to tell stories in order not to get executed. Salim hints that he also has to tell the story well enough in order not to fall to pieces. Salim, like Shahzade, picks up stories within the story and introduces new characters and new marvels. He piles digression upon digression to keep from ever getting to the end. He wants the reader to go on reading, to be eager to see what happens next. So, the disintegration of Salim's body is closely linked with the disintegration of nation, as well as it reflects the literary fragmentation of the novel. The novel begins in 1915. The use of this particular period, it seems that he has just used it playfully without any purpose. But there is always a purpose behind, or we can search a purpose when he is writing or pointing out something. It becomes clear later on. This year, 1915, was important in the national history for a different reason as well. Two moderate leaders died in 1915, Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Firoz Shah. The national movement moving towards more radical leadership. So this time period is witnessing slowly the end of the moderate period and the beginning of the radical period or extremist period. 1915 is also the year when Mahatma Gandhi returned to India. So, at the national front, these things were happening. At the international front, this was the second year of the First World War. So, crucial things were happening at the national level as well as the international level. Rushdie, while he seems to be using language very playfully with an intermix of irreverence, hybridity, mimicry, humor, we also get to know that things are being done very deliberately. The important issues, historical events are not touched seriously. They are just hinted and mentioned. The introduction of the year 1915 as the starting point of the novel is no accident. It has been done deliberately. It has been designed in that way to bring together all of these layered things which are hidden and embedded in this nationalist history. The irreverence and the distancing is also one way of rejecting the dominant nationalist history, which has been told and which has been handed out. So playfully mentioning or rejecting the important dominant nationalist history, a characteristic of postmodernist texts which rejects all grand narratives, which debunks all important issues, favoring the insignificant, the trivial, or the mundane aspect of the life. The story begins with Adam Aziz. One thing is there, most of the character, they are facing the identity crisis. Their names get changed, their conditions, their places, their ideologies that get changed. So the characters in the novel undergoes a crisis of identity. The first character here we have the grandfather of Salim Sinai, Adam Aziz. He is a product of the modern education, progressive thinking, as well as the place, the people, they have also shaped his ideologies. He is a doctor, a skeptic, an atheist. Story begins 30 years before India's independence, and he is a reflection of the many effects of colonialism on the colonized. Adam is westernized. He has been educated in European schools, yet he still finds value in traditional Indian cultures and belief. Later on, he abandons his Muslim faith. He encourages his wife to exist parda, and he assists in Mahatma Gandhi's Hartal. Allegorically, Adam represents the struggle of modern India under the continued control of the British. Adam, how his personality has been formed. He is a doctor. He went to Germany and became a doctor, so he has a German knowledge. So, and also he is from India. Indian belief has shaped him. His wife, his mother, they are very traditional. His mother is a traditional housewife. So is his wife, Nazim. She is a very strong-willed lady, guided by religious dogmatism. And when he asks her to be modern enough to leave observing Parda, so she becomes very angry. Through Aziz, the writer is pointing out the belief, the faith in secularism, in modern ideas. Even Aziz becomes very angry when he finds the Muslim teacher is teaching very orthodoxical, old views to his children. He started teaching his children foreign languages and instills in them his liberal and progressive idea. He struggles often with the questions of the existence of God throughout the novel. His friend, Boatman Tai, he is a boatman from Kashmir. So he represents antiquity and Aziz represents modernity. One thing you will see that in the characters, they are torn apart or they come across the people that presents a clash between tradition and modern, Western and Indian outlook, progressive and orthodoxical approach. This Tai, he represents antiquity. He is mysterious, he is ancient and wise figure who remains resentful of the world's encroachment into his territory, Kashmir, until his death. He doesn't want that people should not come there, or people or ideas or anything that is going to change his place. He represents a timely place that is untouched by British colonialism and Western influences. He becomes angry with Adam Aziz when he returns from a German medical school, a changed and modern man. He used to share his knowledge with Adam in his youth. Adam is invited by a rich landowner, Ghani Sahib. He is blind. Tai takes him to his house. He warns that his daughter should be treated by this doctor, but for the sake of modesty, because of the culture prevalent in Muslim community, the women are not allowed to come before the male. They have to cover themselves from the male gaze. So Ghani Sahib warns that his daughter should be treated, suffering from some ailments, should be treated by this doctor, but the whole body should not be shown to him. So the daughter Naseem does not flaunt her body under the nose of a strange man. Naseem is always covered by a sheet with a small hole of 7 inches in it that is moved to expose the part of her that is sick. When doctor feels shocked, he is unable to understand how to treat a patient like this. He never came across such kind of situation. He asked her father, Ghani Sahib, about how to examine the girl Naseem without looking at her. He is told by Naseem's father Ghani that, "You Europe return chappies forget certain things. Dr. Sahib, my daughter is a decent girl. It goes without saying. She does not flaunt her body under the nose of a strange man. You will understand that you can't be permitted to see her. No, not in any circumstances. Accordingly, I have required her to be positioned behind that sheet. She stands there like a good girl." Naseem is kept behind a perforated sheet. Perforated sheet means a sheet with a hole. This is the first metaphor, first imagery that has been used throughout the novel, even when she has to be examined by the doctor. Aziz has to examine her with the help of a holy sheet held by three lady wrestlers, while Naseem obediently places the required segment against that hole, the part of the body which is having the problem that has been exposed through that hole. In the following years, the girl contracts a quite extraordinary number of minor illness, which results in exactly what the astute landlord has planned. It is always the technique or the tricks of the parents to trap the eligible bachelor for their daughter. As you are aware, in Pride and Prejudice, Mrs. Bennet is always in search of eligible bachelor for her daughters, and here this man Ghani, he has planned this trick that every time he will come, he will treat his daughter, and a time will come when he will fall in love. And really what he planned, that happened. The doctor, Adam Aziz, creates a picture of Naseem in his mind, glued together by his imagination, and falls desperately in love with the girl. He's just looking at the different parts of the body, and then through his imagination he's creating the whole of that lady, and then he falls desperately in love with Naseem. Piecing together the parts he has seen, Aziz presupposes that there is a wholeness that the parts represents. The image of the perforated sheet is an important one for the narrative of the work, for it enacts a delicate interplay between partial and whole vision, fragmentation and unity. Adam is seduced not just by the parts of the girl that he sees through the whole, but also by the idea that he can form an image of the whole based solely on the parts that he has seen. The image applies to the nature of India insofar as it is a single nation composed of many different religions, peoples, cultures, and languages. Perforated sheet let us peep through its hole. Perforated sheet is a protector of identity and symbolic of fragmentation. So, through fragmentation, the whole is presented. So, the notion of fragmentation, and through that the presentation of the whole, is an important features of postmodernist technique. Here, through this image, through this metaphor of perforated sheet, the writer is telling about, through it he's telling the narratives, he's telling about the characters, he's telling about the plot. Everywhere we are not getting the whole of anything. It's always been presented in parts, and then we are in love with the whole, seeing that part, as Adam Aziz has done. Adam falls in love with Naseem in pieces. As a result, their love never has a cohesive unity that holds them together. Their love is fragmented, just as their daughter Amina's attempts to fall in love with her husband are also fragmented. So, as we see, the in the case of use of fragmentation and whole, uh, in the case of Adam and Nazim, the same we see in the case of Amina and her husband Ahmad Sinai. So she was already married before this marriage. This is her second marriage, and it was difficult for her to forget her first husband, and now it is difficult for her to love her second husband. So Amina, Salim's mother, attempts to fall in love with her husband are also fragmented. Haunted by the memory of her previous husband Nadir Khan, Amina embarks on a campaign to fall in love with her new husband in sections. The perforated sheet makes appearance with Jamila Singer. Jamila, she is the sister of Salim Sinai. She sings in a very melodious way. She has been invited in an assembly to sing. Now, for the sake of the modesty, for the sake of the purity, the female, they are not allowed to come before the males. So she has covered herself from top to the bottom with a white sheet, and only a hole is made in that sheet from where her lips are coming out. So the people have just seen her lips. So Jamila Singer, in an attempt to preserve her purity, she shrouds herself completely, except for a single hole for her lips. The perforated sheet, in addition to preserving her purity, also reduces to her to nothing more than a voice. The sheet becomes a veil that separates her from the rest of the world and reflects her inability to accept affection. So this perforated sheet is used again and again in the novel. For the first 3 years, Adam Aziz treats her through the help of the perforated sheet. She was suffering one by one different kinds of ailments, and he has become a regular goer in her house. Adam Aziz sees his future wife's face for the first time on the same day World War I ends in 1918. Now, can you find any connection between these two events? World War I, that devastated the world, that brought a catastrophe, havoc in the world, very serious, very critical, very significant issue of the time. And it has been compared with a man who has seen the face of a lady. So how the trivial became significant and significant became trivial. As Salim's grandparents fall in love, we witness the first occasion in which a great event in world history corresponds to a personal event in the lives of Salim Sinai's family. World War I ends on the same day that Adam finally sees Nasim's face. Rashidi links to the events to illustrate the ways in which humans rely on their individual experiences to make sense of huge, abstract historical events. Sometimes public history and private history relate in a parallel but apparently unconnected ways. So these two events are not connected, but the aim of the writer is to show that maybe some national or international issues are very important for the country, but there are some issues that are very significant and important in the life of an individual. Maybe not significant from the public opinion, but that is significant in the life of the people. So here is what shifting of the paradigm from the center to periphery, from the important significant themes to the themes which are related with the common man. Adam Aziz and Nazim marry and the couple moves to Agra. Adam and Nazim have 3 daughters, Elia, Mumtaz and Emerald, and 2 sons, Mustafa and Hanif. The story begins in Kashmir, Salim Sinai's account of his grandfather Adam Aziz resembles the story found in the biblical book of Genesis. Adam's name suggests the biblical Adam. The story begins with Adam Sinai and ends with the child of Adam and who utters the first word, Salim Sinai's adopted child Adam, who utters the first word abracadabra. Now, from the first man, Adam, the story begins and also ends with the first man, the name of the first man. Now, if Rashidi is using or hinting all these names, he is at times seen suggesting or incorporating all kind of mythological characters belonging to Indian, Western, Christian, Muslim beliefs and philosophy. So here Adam's name suggests the biblical Adam, the world's first man. Adam and his consort Eve lived in the Garden of Eden, and Adam's hometown in Kashmir is similarly described as a lush, beautiful locale. Kashmir has often been described by the poets, by the writers, even by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as a paradise on the earth. So it could be, there could be a connection between the Garden of Eden and paradise. Rashid's use of the biblical tale demonstrates his willingness to incorporate and transform various literary traditions into his own narrative. One more thing, that Kashmir is always a disputed region. After independence, it was been dominated by Hindu, but the Pakistan is always interested to occupy it. Adam Aziz, after coming to Agra, he becomes a follower of the optimistic activist Mia Abdullah, whose anti-partition stance eventually leads to his assassination. In the story of Adam Aziz, we will find that he is always interacting and influenced by the optimistic, modern, liberal ideas, rejecting the orthodoxical views. So, the concept of secularism is being presented by Adam Aziz. Mia Abdullah, he is also known as the hummingbird. He is in habit of singing, humming, so he's been called. One more thing you will notice that the names of the characters either get changed or they are been addressed by the nickname. So name is connected with the identity. Either it reveals the crisis of the identity or the change of the identity. Mia Abdullah, a pro-Indian Muslim politician who creates the Free Islam Convocation, a gathering of Indian Muslims. He has created a kind of a group named as Free Islam Convocation, and where the Muslim they have participated. They disapprove of the dogmatism and intolerance frequently present in many traditional practitioners Islam. So in the works of Salman Rushdie, as I have discussed, that there is always he is presenting a progressive ideas, and he always wants a transform should be done. The windows of ideologies which are closed from so many ages, not years but the ages, should be open now so that the fresh air can come in. So represented here these ideologies by Mia Abdullah, but the people who are always or daring to talk anything against Islam, they are always been assassinated and killed. So was the fate of Mia Abdullah. He is killed by assassins following his efforts to bring his convocation to Agra, a stronghold of staunch Muslims. Mia Abdullah's optimistic hum is being silenced and symbolically destroyed any hope for a unified India. Following Abdullah's death, Adam hides Abdullah's frightened assistant Nadir Khan despite his wife's opposition. The period of optimism that Mia Abdullah inspired ends with his assassination. Adam agrees to provide his disciple Nadir Khan sanctuary despite his wife's protests and concerns for their daughter's purity. In retaliation, Nazim promises never to speak again, and silence descends upon the house. Nazim is a very strong lady, strong will she is having, and then if she failed to change the mindset of her husband, she started doing this thing in a different way. Several suitors line up for the three daughters of Aziz, including Major Julfikar, an official in the Pakistan Army, Nadir Khan, who lives hidden in the Aziz basement. And because of this, the name of the chapter has been given Under the Carpet. And Ahmad Sinai. Mumtaz, Adam's favorite daughter and the darkest skinned of all the children, tends to Nadir Khan. The two fall in love without ever exchanging a word, and Nadir asks Adam for his daughter's hand in marriage. The family arranges a secret marriage between the two. Afterwards, Mumtaz happily moves into the basement, returning to the upper floors by day to preserve the secrecy of her husband's concealment. After 2 years of marriage, Adam finds out that his daughter is still a virgin, as Nadir and Mumtaz have yet to consummate their marriage. Nadir Khan is sent returning for his life when Mumtaz's sister Emerald tells Major Zulfikar, an officer in the Pakistani army, soon to be Emerald's husband, about his hiding place in the basement. Abandoned by her husband, Mumtaz agrees to marry Ahmad Sinai, a young merchant who until then had been courting his sister Elia. After getting married to Ahmad Sinai, Mumtaz is asked to change her name. He says, "Change your name. Time for a fresh start. Throw Mumtaz and her Nadir Khan out of the window. I will choose you a new name, Amina. Amina Sinai. You would like that. Whatever you say, husband," says Mumtaz. Now you can see the characters, they are always facing this identity crisis that are being suggested through the names, change of the names also. One more thing, like Mumtaz, she changed her name from Amina, she has become Mumtaz, but it was very difficult for her to remove thoroughly from her mind Nadir Khan. Amina, Salim's mother, with her husband, moves to Bombay. They buy a new house from a departing Englishman, William Methwold, who owns an estate at the top of a hill. Now, this man, William Methwold, is also signifying something here related with the post-colonialism. When Salim's parents buy a villa from him, William Methwold, he insists that they will retain his mansion with all its contents, and he refuses to make the transaction official until India's independence on August 15, 1947. The small-scale property transfer at Methold's estate clearly corresponds to the larger political situation as Great Britain prepares itself to transfer sovereign power over India to the independent governments of India and Pakistan. So, handing over this property by by William Methold to Sinai's family is somewhere parallel or compare to the Great Britain's transferring sovereign power to India. And the second, Methold's strange request mirror British colonialism and the European influence left behind in India, even after independence, as the residents of Methold's estate continue to observe his custom long after he is gone. They were imitating or aping the behaviors or manners and etiquettes of the Englishmen. We Willy Winky. See the name? Very strange. Rashadi's habit of using such kind of things. A poor man who entertains the families of Methold's state says that his wife Vanita is also expecting a child soon. Now, how this character is connected? Actually, Wee Willie Winkie, he is a poor man who earns a living by singing for the wealthy families of Methold's estate. And Vanita, she is wife of Wee Willie Winkie. Wee Willie Winkie is presumed father of Salim Sinai, and Vanita, she is biological mother of Salim Sinai. She dies during child labor. William Methold, he is biological father. So William